It was because you posted something on my YouTube channel and I loved it so much. The insight that you had was absolutely amazing. And I was wondering if you would like sharing it.
Yeah, I would. So, gosh, it's a little bit hazy now. It's not so sort of like fresh.
Do you want me to say it? And then you can
Maybe that would be easy. Then I don't have to go into sort of thinking too much.
Yes. Perfect. Okay. What you wrote on my channel, how I understood what you wrote, was that you had an interaction with your mother, and in that interaction you realized that there were so many conditioned patterns in it, that she would say something that would make you react in a certain way, and that was part of the game. That you then reacting would mean that she didn't have to say what she wanted or say what she didn't want or change her life in any way, because you did the job for her. And that constellation of her saying something, you reacting, her then being, now I'm just making stuff up, her then being hurt about you being dismissive of her, was just part of the role that she was playing, and you were a pawn in that game. And that kind of pulled you out of the situation. So instead of reacting, you could have compassion for her needing to pull strings like that, for her to feel in a certain way. That's how I understood it.
Yeah, that's you're seeing it from a slightly sort of more intricate perspective, perhaps. The whole game was, from my sort of feeling from being a child, it was always like, why can't you be other than you are, basically, which led to a lot of confusion and a sort of a sense of shame and a sense of like permanently being judged, and always just feeling on edge, because if I couldn't be who I was and be accepted for who I was to a certain degree, because she wanted me to be other than that, it left a very insecure, there was a lot of insecurity, which really was there until, and probably this, of course, as you said too, that it's seen through, but there will still be hangover sort of that will carry on. But what was seen was all of it was this, from the interchange I had with her about something, and I was a bit dismissive of what she was saying. And I said, oh, well, you would think like that. Why do you always think like that? And I realized I was saying her voice back to her. Why can't you be so different? Why can't you see things differently? And so we had finished the call, and I felt sad. I thought, oh gosh, why am I so judgmental? And then I just saw somehow the pattern of her shouting, a me little person. And I was and in that rerun, I was laughing because she was saying, you should be different. And I was sort of saying, well, I can't, because I'm just me, It was like the pattern was broken. And I really sort of saw myself little and laughing, and in a sort of almost a mischievous way, that I didn't need to hold on to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And in that you're also setting her free, that she doesn't need to be any different than she is. She can be as dismissive and judgmental as as she wants to.
Yeah.
It's completely fine. You're setting her free to be that. And by that you're healing both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having since I think that's a good probably a week or so was when you did just release that first Fetter 5. So since then, it hasn't been such a sort of shame-based thing, but there has been some reactivity coming up of the sort of somewhat judgmental about, and some defensive things going on, which which I'm sort of inquiring into, but the route seems to be a bit different.
Yeah.
When I
Do you
did-
know, what the what it is you're diverting from? I just want to make clear, when we talk about being reactive, somebody's saying something and you're reacting. The way that we look at it is that is a diversion from something underneath that we don't want to feel.
Yeah.
So there's a feeling coming up in the body, and instead of staying with that feeling, we divert our attention by pointing fingers and reacting at the other person, wanting, to blame, shame, and complain about them, because then we don't have to feel the body. Do you know what the diversion is about? Do you know what it is the feeling in the body that you're trying to divert from?
Well, yeah, that there currently there's been feeling of mostly sadness.
Mm.
A lot, the situation that I'm a full-time carer, and also but there's been some sort of rather dramatic, I don't really know, but moments of, I suppose, reactivity, simply because my husband is very unstable and I have to move him and he doesn't move, and he seems to be falling, and I'm saying stand up straight and he's saying you're pushing me, and it sort of gets, it's fraught. And my whole thing is there's a survival thing, although he doesn't fall. And then afterwards, and there is a sense of sort of, this shouldn't be happening afterwards, and sadness is coming up because I'm trying to do my best, and that we're not understanding each other's body language, and it's all very difficult. And that's the sort of thing which is pretty intense, because it's not even we are saying things to each other, but we're in this fraught state of, in a way, danger, not really danger, but it could be.
But also vulnerability about, your life together having changed from what the expectation and the original plan was, into something that neither of you could see that this was how it was going to pan out, that this is how at some point we reach that point of no return, and then it's just acknowledging this is our life from now on, this is how it ends, how our relationship and our marriage ends, with one of you not being anymore. This is how it is. And obviously there's a lot of sadness and a lot of frustration and vulnerability and in that.
So that seems to be, it's not so much the shame thing, it's more a different thing, this sort of sadness, and of also being, doing the best. Also, in a way, realizing that he's doing his best too, but when the situation gets stressful, then there's reactivity. And then it's like, how do I untangle that? Because it's Fetter 5, but and I have worked quite a bit and disengaged from calmer situations, which are more verbal, or but this is like when you're holding somebody's weight up and trying to transfer them, it's taking it up to another level, as it were.
A question that I'm trying to kind of figure out how to formulate it, but I know I've been in similar situations to that. And so I know, recognizing it from a little bit from when I was in it, and then definitely from afterwards, though, was the recognition that the stress reaction in that moment is really unhelpful in that moment. Like it is so counterproductive. And we feel like it's just a natural thing to respond with in that situation, but actually it's just making the situation worse for both of you. So I'm trying to feel into how to kind of what is actually happening in that moment when you are trying to stand him up, and there's that disconnect between your perception of what's happening and his perception of what's happening, and then that kind of feedback loop of him being reactive and you being reactive to him being reactive, and what is actually happening in you in that moment?
I think it's impatience.
Mm.
What would you like to be happening at that moment?
I've had moments when it's worked, when it's like, oh, we can just stay here for the next 5 minutes. And it hasn't always been like that, but then sometimes there is different situations where you know, the circumstances shift. And yeah, I think it's impatience. I want this precarious situation, or probably some tiredness underlining that it's not okay. I want this to be over. So yeah, I think it really is an impatience thing.
Yeah. So have you worked with that in terms of, you know, sitting with like a sentence and stimulating it and sitting with that on the
I
mat?
haven't worked with it in that situation, but I worked with it in a different format a little while ago. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because impatience in that is the same that we have, you know, with children that are not, you know, taking the right Wellingtons on, and they want flip-flops in snow and all of that. It's the same impatience.
yeah,
We have a plan in our head of how things are supposed to happen,
Yeah.
and then they act like a stick in the wheel to my plan.
Yeah.
In that moment, we're not present in the moment. We are already sitting in the car on the way to kindergarten, school, and work. We're not here in the moment, and by that we're not compassionate for the experience we have in ourselves in that moment, and compassionate with the child, or in your case, your husband, in that moment.
And I think some of that, like what you just said too, is really important, because I understand, Rowena, that feeling of exhaustion that kind of underlies it and makes it all even more, everything seems exaggerated in its importance and in its you know, irritability, and it's just not okayness. And I think that compassion that you mentioned, of having that compassion with yourself, in that recognizing, okay, I really do feel exhausted right now, and I am, you know, and have compassion for the fact that you are doing something really remarkable and honorable, and that, you know, you it's okay to feel that it's okay to feel exhausted and really overburdened in that situation, and have compassion for yourself, instead of, I have to power through it and I have to, you know, any of that comes up, recognize how self-defeating that is. And
but also really understanding that there's no end to it. I mean, the end is the end that nobody wants, like you had with your mom. The only end that was there was that she was gonna die, and then it would end. There's no other end, and you don't want that end to happen.
It's true.
But until that end happens, you will be exhausted. You will have PTSD until that ends happen, and we don't want that end to happen. So it's also really so much compassion for that situation you're in, Rowena, that it's like, you know, no one should go through what you're going through, and yet here we are. So really having compassion for that.
Thank you. I mean, that's something that does get a little bit. I mean, I work with, I hold the space for myself often at nighttime. You know, I can feel into the sadness, but not so much for what I'm actually doing. And you know, it's more just raw sensation, holding the space for that. But yeah, and actually, it's funny because again, I realized I was talking about patience, but also the little voice which has slipped beside me was, why can't you move your feet the way I want you to move? You know, so it is that sentence that really crops up. So
there is so much frustration in the person, seeing a person lose their abilities in life. And
you don't want it. to be
You
like
don't.
that, you know.
No. And it's such a natural reaction to taking somebody who you love, taking somebody who you've been with, and seeing that downhill slide, and knowing, I think a lot of it comes down to that powerlessness that we feel, that it's coming from that place of recognizing that we can't really do anything about it. It's
and that's
just
only
being
one
present.
direction.
Exactly.
And it's only going in one
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
That it's not going back to being
No.
jolly and happy and good again ever.
No. And you just have to be present for it. And that's the sort of the most you can do, is to
Sending you so much love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's just wonderful having all your help and everything to do with coming from the both of you. Honestly, it's just a great blessing.
Oh,
thank you.
so happy. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.